5 malaria myths from Alpha Aid. We met a female development worker in Central Africa who was completely convinced that I don't take any prophylaxis. Malaria is harmless anyway. Everyone has it there. Really? There are many myths and falsehoods about this disease, so let's take a closer look at some of them. Myth 1, malaria is on the decline. Yes and no. In 2022, there were 249 million cases of malaria worldwide, significantly more than before the COVID-19 pandemic and 5 million more than in the previous year. At the same time, there has been a slight decrease in deaths. In 2020, the WHO estimated 631,000 deaths, while the estimate for 2022 is 608,000. Alongside tuberculosis and HIV, it is still one of the 3 infectious diseases responsible for the most deaths worldwide. Myth 2. You are immune after a malaria infection. Not really. It is true that you gain a certain immunity with each malaria infection you have had. However, this immunity is not permanent and slowly disappears when you are no longer exposed to the disease. For example, when you leave the endemic area. Furthermore, it is important to realize the price of this immunity. 80% of malaria cases affect young children, and the mortality rate is high. Only those who survive develop immunity. Therefore, locals in high-risk malaria areas are not a benchmark for travelers. Myth 3. Locals don't take prophylaxis either. Haha, but they would like to. Of course, not every local takes malaria prophylaxis all the time, but that's also because they simply can't afford it. This statement shows Western arrogance and ignorance, and is increasingly less in line with reality. Many African countries at high risk of malaria are trying to provide prophylaxis to the population, approximately 200 million doses in 2022. Myth 4. Malaria prophylaxis has far too many side effects. Yes, every medication has side effects. That is why there are clear recommendations as to when and where prophylaxis should be taken and when it should not. However, for high-risk countries for malaria tropica, the possible side effects are out of proportion to the danger. If left untreated, the mortality rate is around 20%. Myth 5. If I get malaria, I'll just go to the hospital. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Of course, any feverish illness in the tropics should be assessed by a doctor. However, the problem is that the symptoms of malaria are often unspecific and confusing, and diarrhea may be the first sign. But with tropical malaria, things have to move fast. If the diagnosis is delayed and the treatment is late or wrong, it can be fatal. So even though you could protect yourself, you choose not to and unnecessarily burden the scarce local resources in the event of illness. Even with local hospitals, you are responsible for yourself. Who drives a car without a seatbelt just because there are ambulances? Malaria is preventable and treatable. People in endemic areas would be happy if they all had the same prevention options as we do.